3 a.m., the moment when God is closest to you, the divine secret revealed. Have you ever wondered why you wake up at 3 a.m. for no reason? You're not startled by a nightmare. There's no sound, no disturbance, yet your eyes open as if something or someone is calling you. The room feels different. The air is thick with an unseen presence. You check the clock, 3 a.m. Your heartbeat quickens. You've heard the whispers, stories of people waking up at this very hour, sensing an invisible force. Some call it the witching hour, a time of darkness. But what if they're wrong? What if 3 a.m. is not the hour of fear, but the hour of divine presence? Throughout history, prophets, saints, and even Jesus himself sought the solitude of the night. The Bible speaks of sacred encounters in the early hours before dawn. Could it be that at 3 a.m., when the world is asleep, heaven is awake, waiting for you to listen? So tonight, as you lie awake in the silence, ask yourself, did you wake up by chance, or were you chosen? 3 a.m., the hidden meaning behind this sacred hour. Why 3 a.m.? Why not midnight or 4 a.m.? What is it about this exact moment that makes it so significant? To understand this, we must look beyond the ticking clock and into the realm of the spiritual. In the divine order of time, nothing happens by accident. Every moment carries meaning, and 3 a.m. is no exception. In Christian tradition, 3 p.m. is known as the hour of mercy, the moment when Jesus took his last breath on the cross, offering redemption to the world. If 3 p.m. is the hour of sacrifice, then 3 a.m. is its mirror image, the hour of testing, awakening, and spiritual battle. Some believe that as Jesus surrendered his life at 3 p.m., the forces of darkness rise in opposition at 3 a.m., seeking to disrupt, to tempt, and to challenge those who walk in faith. But what if this hour is not about fear? What if, in reality, it is the hour when God comes closest, calling those who are willing to listen? Many have spoken of waking up at 3 a.m., feeling an unshakable presence in the room, an urge to pray, or a weight pressing upon their spirit. Science might explain it as a disruption in the sleep cycle, but deep down, you know it's something more. You are not waking up by chance. This is a divine invitation. The Bible is filled with moments of deep spiritual encounters that take place in the silence of the night. King David himself spoke of rising before dawn to seek God's presence, saying, "At midnight I rise to give you thanks because of your righteous laws." Psalm 119:62. In Exodus, God moved through Egypt at midnight, bringing deliverance to his people. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt. Exodus 12:29. Again and again, Scripture reveals that when the world sleeps, heaven moves. Some call 3 a.m. the witching hour, a time when the forces of darkness are strongest. But for those with faith, this is not a time of fear. It is a time of divine connection. It is when distractions fade, when the noise of the world dies down, and when the voice of God becomes the loudest. Could it be that when you wake up at this sacred hour, God is stirring something within you? Could it be that he is calling you to rise, to listen, to step into something greater? Maybe you felt it before, an unexplained nudge in your spirit, a whisper in the silence, a presence that lingers just beyond your understanding. If that moment comes again, don't ignore it. Instead of rolling over and going back to sleep, take a breath. Be still. Pray. Because at 3 a.m., when all is quiet, you might be standing at the threshold of something sacred. 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., the stillness before the call. The night is at its deepest. The world is wrapped in silence, as if time itself has slowed. Between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., a strange stillness settles over everything. It is the quietest part of the night, a time when even the wind seems to hold its breath. The streets are empty, lights flicker in the distance, and an unspoken presence lingers in the air. This is not an ordinary silence. It is a waiting silence, a sacred pause. You may not feel it, but something is moving beneath the surface. If you were to step outside at this hour, you would feel it in your bones. A weight in the air, a whisper in the distance, a sense that you are standing on the edge of something unseen. It is as if the universe itself is preparing for something. Many people who wake up during this hour experience an unsettling feeling. Not fear, not panic, but a strange sense of awareness. Their mind is still foggy from sleep, yet something inside them is stirring. Some report feeling watched, as if unseen eyes are upon them. Others feel as if they are being drawn into something greater, a presence they cannot quite explain. It is as if the soul is being prepared before the divine invitation arrives. This moment of stillness is no accident. Throughout history, before God moved, before great miracles happened, before divine encounters took place, there was always a moment of silence, a deep pause, a breath before the storm. Between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., we are in that breath. Look at Scripture. Before God spoke to Moses through the burning bush, there was silence. Before Jesus walked on water, there was silence. Before the walls of Jericho fell, there was silence. Again and again, before heaven moves, before destinies shift, there is always this quiet, a stillness that signals something is about to happen. Jesus himself knew the importance of this time. On the night before his crucifixion, he retreated to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. The weight of the world was upon him, yet his disciples, his closest friends, could not stay awake. They slept while he battled in prayer, preparing for what was to come. Could it be that this same unseen battle is happening around us? Could it be that before 3 a.m., before the divine connection is made, before God calls you to wake, there is first a moment of stillness, an hour of preparation? For those who pray during this time, the air feels different. The prayers feel heavier, more intense, more urgent. The great spiritual warriors, monks, prophets, saints, all understood the power of praying before the awakening. They knew that before the heavens open, before the voice of God calls, the soul must be still. And so between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., the question is not just why am I awake? The real question is, are you ready? Are you prepared for what comes next? Because the silence will not last forever. The moment of awakening is near. 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., the thin veil between two worlds. The stillness of the night lingers, but something is changing. Between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., the air feels heavier, charged with an energy that cannot be ignored. This is the transition hour, the moment when the unseen world draws closer, when the spiritual realm is at its most active. It is the last breath before 3 a.m., the hour when the divine and the mortal collide. If you have ever been awake during this time, you know the feeling. The world is silent, yet your heart beats faster. Your body is exhausted, yet your mind is strangely alert. A presence lingers in the air, pressing against the edge of your consciousness. Some describe it as an invisible weight on their chest, an overwhelming sense of awareness, or the feeling that they are being watched. Others say their dreams become more vivid, more real, as if something or someone is trying to communicate with them. Could it be that 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. is the hour when the veil between two worlds is at its thinnest? Could it be that this is the moment when heaven is preparing to speak? Throughout history, countless spiritual experiences have been recorded during this time. Many who wake up in this window feel an unshakable urge to pray. Some experience visions, messages, or even warnings. The Bible is filled with moments when God speaks in the night, when revelations come in the darkness before the dawn. In the book of Job, it is written, "For God speaks in one way, and in two, though man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, while they slumber on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and terrifies them with warnings." Job 33, 14-16. What if the reason you wake up at this hour is because God is trying to get your attention? What if the unease you feel is not fear, but a spiritual awakening? Many believe that this is the hour of spiritual warfare, when forces beyond our sight engage in unseen battles. The Bible warns us that the enemy is always working, always seeking to deceive and distract. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Ephesians 6:12. This is why many spiritual warriors choose this time to pray, to fight back, to stand strong, to claim victory before the dawn. Those who rise at this hour, whether by choice or by an unshakable force, often feel that they are being called to something greater. If you find yourself awake between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., do not ignore it. Do not dismiss it as mere coincidence. Be still, listen, ask. Because in just a few moments the clock will strike 3 a.m., the moment when God is closest to you, the moment when everything shifts. 3 a.m., the moment when God is closest to you. The clock strikes 3 a.m. The world is asleep, wrapped in silence, yet you are awake. You don't know why, but something feels different. The air is heavy, but not with fear. There is something sacred about this moment. It is as if the universe is holding its breath, waiting. This is not just another hour in the night. This is the hour when heaven opens. For centuries, 3 a.m. has been a mystery, a threshold between the physical and the spiritual, a time when divine encounters are most powerful. Some call it the witching hour, a time when darkness is strongest, but for those who have faith, 3 a.m. is not a time of darkness. It is a time of revelation, a time of connection, a time when God draws near. In Christian tradition, 3 p.m. is the hour when Jesus took his last breath on the cross, the hour of mercy, the moment of ultimate sacrifice. If 3 p.m. is the hour of surrender, then 3 a.m. is the hour of awakening. It is the moment when the soul is stirred, when the spirit is called, when the unseen world whispers in the silence. Have you ever woken up at this hour and felt an unexplained presence? Have you ever sensed that something or someone was near? You are not alone. Many believers throughout history have spoken about waking up at 3 a.m. and feeling an overwhelming urge to pray. Some have experienced visions, divine messages, or an unshakable peace that washes over them. Others have felt a gentle nudge in their spirit, as if God himself was inviting them into his presence. The Bible is filled with stories of encounters that happened in the darkness before dawn. In 1 Samuel 3, the young prophet Samuel was sleeping when he heard his name being called. 3 times he woke up thinking it was Eli, but it was not a man's voice. It was the voice of God. Then the Lord called Samuel again the 3rd time, and he arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. 1 Samuel 3:8. What if, at 3 a.m., God is calling your name? What if this is not a random awakening, but a divine appointment? Jesus himself prayed in the late hours of the night, withdrawing to be alone with the Father. In Mark 1:35 it is written, "Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed." Mark 1:35. If even the Son of God sought the presence of the Father in the silence of the night, then what does that say about this hour? Could it be that at 3 a.m. God is not just near, you are closest to him? If you find yourself awake at this hour, do not ignore it. Do not roll over and go back to sleep. Instead, pause, pray, listen. Open your heart and ask, God, what are you trying to tell me? Because in this stillness, in this sacred moment, you are not alone. 4 a.m. to 5 a.m., the dawn of revelation. The night is beginning to fade. The stillness that once felt heavy is now shifting. If 3 a.m. was the moment when God was closest, then 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. is the hour of revelation, the hour when clarity begins to emerge. For those who have been awake, praying, or simply feeling the weight of something unseen, this is when the shift happens. The darkness has not yet lifted, but a new sense of peace begins to settle in. It is no longer the time of battle, it is the time of answers. Throughout history, this hour has been known as the time when divine revelations are given. Prophets, mystics, and saints have all testified that between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., the mind is most open, the spirit most receptive, and the heart most willing to listen. In the book of Job, we find a verse that captures the essence of this moment. God speaks in their ears and terrifies them with warnings, to turn them from wrongdoing and keep them from pride, to preserve them from the pit, their lives from perishing by the sword. Job 33:16-18. Could it be that 4 a.m. is the time when God reveals what He has been preparing you for? Could it be that in the hours of silence, when your heart has been searching, this is when the answers come? Those who wake up at this time often feel a shift, not just in their surroundings, but within themselves. Some feel as if a weight has been lifted, as if something they didn't even realize they were carrying has now been released. Others feel a deep sense of peace, as if God Himself has whispered to them in the quiet. Jesus too understood the power of these early hours. In Mark 1:35, He rose before the sun, before the distractions of the world, to pray. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where He prayed. Mark 1:35. This was not a coincidence. There is power in the morning stillness. There is revelation in the quiet before the world wakes up. If you find yourself awake between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., pay attention. This is not just another sleepless night. This is the moment of clarity, the moment of revelation, the moment when God speaks in ways that can only be heard when everything else is silent. Do not rush back to sleep. Ask yourself, what has God been showing me? What do I feel differently about now? Because at this hour, something sacred is happening. 5 a.m., the first light of God's presence. The sky is still dark, but something has changed. The weight of the night has lifted, and in the distance, a faint glow begins to appear on the horizon. 5 a.m. is the moment when night and day meet, the final breath of darkness before the light takes over. This is the hour of breakthrough, renewal, and divine presence. If you have been awake through the night, you will notice that 5 a.m. feels different from 3 a.m. The heaviness of spiritual battle has faded. The urgency of the early hours has passed. Now there is a sense of peace, a quiet assurance that you are no longer in the waiting. Something has shifted. The answers that seemed distant at 3 a.m. now feel closer. The questions that lingered in the stillness of 4 a.m. now seem clearer. Many believers speak of 5 a.m. as the hour when God's presence is strongest, not in the form of urgency, but in the form of peace. This is the hour when those who wake up early to seek Him experience a deep sense of renewal, as if the Spirit is being refreshed and restored. In Lamentations 3:22-23, Scripture reminds us of the power of the morning. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. This verse is not just poetry, it is a promise. Every morning is a new beginning, a new mercy, a fresh start, and at 5 a.m. this truth becomes real. If 3 a.m. was the time of divine awakening, 4 a.m. the time of revelation, then 5 a.m. is the time of renewal. This is when God restores the soul, when He gives strength for the new day, when He reminds us that His presence is not just in the night, but in every moment we choose to seek Him. Look outside. The first traces of dawn are breaking through. The world is waking up, but you are already awake. You have been awake in spirit. You have stood in the stillness of the night. You have listened. You have felt His presence. Now the light comes, and with it, a new day, a new beginning, a new calling. If you find yourself awake at 5 a.m., do not let this moment slip away. Take a breath. Look around. God has carried you through the night, and now He is leading you into the light. The final revelation: you were called for a reason. The night has passed. The darkness that once seemed endless has now given way to the light. You have traveled through the silent hours, through the heaviness of 1 a.m., through the shifting atmosphere of 2 a.m., through the divine awakening of 3 a.m., through the revelations of 4 a.m., and into the renewal of 5 a.m. But this was never just about time. This was about something greater. If you have ever woken up in the middle of the night feeling a presence, feeling something stir within your spirit, know this: you were not waking up by accident. You were waking up because you were being called. God does not speak loudly like the world. He whispers in the stillness. He calls in the quiet. He stirs the soul in the hours when no one else is listening. And those who hear, those who wake, those who feel the nudge, those who sense the shift, are the ones who have been chosen to listen. In Isaiah 50 verse 4, it is written, "The sovereign Lord has given me a well-instructed tongue to know the word that sustains the weary. He awakens me morning by morning, awakens my ear to listen like one being instructed." He awakens you morning by morning, not just physically but spiritually. So the next time you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., do not ignore it. The next time you feel a presence in the silence, lean in, pray, listen. Ask, "Lord, what are you trying to show me?" Because God is closest to those who are willing to hear Him in the quiet. And if you are awake, if you are listening, then you have already been called.